Welcome back to another episode of Inside Multifamily Access Control, brought to you by Salto. As always, I have Colin with me. How you doing, Colin?
Doing well. Hello, everybody.
Okay. So coming off the week of the election here, so we're going to not talk about that. We're going to speak about November, like we talked about, which was sustainability and the environment. And one of these ideas and discussion points that has been tossed around as a way that, as an industry, we can build sustainable products is to keep things out of landfills, right? So keeping our products, and I would actually say that we've probably, as an industry, have done a good job with that, right? We build locks; they last for 30 years. Really, you're not typically throwing these out because they became outdated necessarily. But now, though, as they become electronic, you're starting to see now some of the influences from the, more gadget/technology point of view of electronics that do have it. Because before it was brass, it was silver.
The mechanical, the mechanical stuff will last a very long time, for sure.
Correct. Sure. Yeah, but now with the electronics, though, there's and which leads us to, all right, so that is one area. There's a lot of ways that we can look at this. So if we look at it as an industry that probably does this well, but doesn't market it as well, if you would, from a sustainable message, to number two, with right now where we're kind of in this flux on the smart home and smart apartment side, where you have a bunch of different players now getting involved in the connectivity side, that is an area that could drive people to make selections today that they may have to rip and replace for tomorrow, or maybe not. I don't know. There's a lot of. So let's kick it off. All right. So with that, putting aside the marketing side, or maybe we can address that first, right? So if we think about what we just said there, one of the areas is reducing landfills. Our products are historically made to last a long time. You have an introduction. So right there off the bat, we probably as an industry could market that a bit better, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we should think about that. But then now as electronics come into, so let's walk through what are some of the options that are out in the marketplace, or, speaking like specifically to Salto, I know, as you were saying earlier to me offline, you have a way of approaching this that makes it so you don't have to worry about it. So talk to me a little bit about what you see as the different options. As if I'm a person that today is using Z-Wave, but tomorrow wants to use whatever, what happens?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first piece we've got to start again goes to how do we intend to use it, right? As the owner, the developer, the property manager, whatever that is. You talk about online versus offline. What does online mean? Are we going to be truly on a Wi-Fi network? Are we going to be talking to an in-room hub or a Z-Wave hub or a Zigbee hub or something of that nature? So really that first piece of online, offline is a really big deal. In our world, we have an offline solution and an online solution. When you talk about connectivity and movement and change, the offline piece really takes a lot of that connectivity out. We can still provide mobile credentials and things of that nature, but you don't get some of the advantages of online, but you take out some of the potential risk, if you want to call it risk, of future connectivity pieces, right? When you get into that online piece, that's really where I think this conversation starts to change and transition into a piece that people really need to be mindful of. There's multiple different radios as you start to get into ecosystems. And we've talked a lot about integrations in that ecosystem piece of how are you going to have these locks working for the resident? Are you going to have it through a third-party app, through the locks app? What does that look like? So really understanding that has to be a factor because of the Z-Wave, the Zigbee, the Wi-Fi, LoRa, what else is out there? There's probably 20 other types of that connectivity piece. And so that's where you start to say, if I choose one of these connectivity pieces today, yes, my mechanical lock may still function in 3 years, but will this connectivity piece still be viable and still be valid in 3 years? And I'm not suggesting that it won't be, but I think to your point of kind of the question you were asking of, that's where I would start to ask some of those questions.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because we're starting to have the offline online conversation of sort of the different, like, so that's even confusing in a little bit of case of where does the feature set start and end when you do that, right? And I guess the other one being too is the card aspect included into this. Does that, if I'm not using mobile and I'm using cards, what's the level of complexity that gets introduced into the technology piece? Does it make it less manageable or more manageable being offline or online? How do you view it?
Typically, I would say no. More often than not, you're going to see multiple radios in these devices anyways, right? One is establishing the connectivity of the lock itself to the home base, right? Whether you call it a database, a software platform, whatever that is. And then you're going to have a radio or two that's driven towards the credential aspect and that interaction at the lock itself. So, I would say typically no. However, as you get into mobile credentials, you start to add a new dynamic and capability of connectivity, right? And you start to provide an aspect to bring data back to another point without needing some infrastructure. And so I would say historically it hasn't, but with mobile credentials and things of that nature, everybody is now starting to be able to move data in different manners. So from our perspective, we do take heart in the ability to move every lock forward with every software we release. Okay, that's something that we hold near and dear to us. And to this day, we say every lock that we've produced will work on our newest software version. Okay. Now, that is a little bit different because not everything has the same connectivity. We have some RF versions. We are now on a BlueNet version. So we may need a different type of hub in place to talk to some of those locks. But if we get them back to us, they will all still work. Okay. And I think that's kind of at the heart of this connectivity piece, right? We believe platform to platform is where we provide value. We take responsibility to make sure that our platform can still be in that ecosystem. Yes, we've made some improvements along the process of how we connect our locks and things of that nature. But that connectivity is changing, and we're doing our best to continue to change with that. Now, I bring up that platform to platform piece because I think that is a critical conversation here of, if you are in an ecosystem and you're not leveraging kind of platforms, you're just kind of connecting stuff via a hardware connection is kind of the way I say it. If somebody does a change from RF to blue, some sort of BLE type of connectivity, you may be out of luck. And so understanding these connectivity changes and asking the question of company A, how do you approach connectivity? Because it would be wrong, I believe, for us to say, hey, we're going to stay with this connectivity because that's how we can make sure that all these locks work in the future. Well, now you become susceptible to, security and all of that sort of stuff. And so that's not the right answer either. But
yeah, I guess that's the case too. A lot of these conversations before about how products were being purchased were project-based by that current project, but now you're talking about sort of a platform for the use case is like an ongoing long-term relationship, if you would. And then it also then makes me think about, like, the expectations can't be that this stuff connects and talks forever, especially if you don't have some ongoing relationship from a reoccurring type model, because then your cost structures are totally out of whack. So, but then again, if you're a consumer or a person who purchases it, your expectations might be that it does. So there's a whole mess, if you would, that gets created. This is where I guess some clear transparency on how you handle these things and what the processes is, but then also from an end user standpoint, appreciating it, if you would, and knowing to ask those type of questions, and picking not just based off of color finish in the project today, but also sort of what it can do long term.
Well, yeah, and I think going back to what, the goal of this conversation this month of sustainability, right? That both from a marketing standpoint on kind of the manufacturer side of this, how can we project some of that and change the some of the story, right? It can't just be about connectivity and things of that nature. Sustainability should be part of that messaging. And then on the flip side, from a multifamily standpoint, that should become part of the decision process, right? Of we can't say sustainability is part of our core values and then not make decisions based on some of that. So for me, it's not so much about the connectivity and all of that today. It's about what are some of those opportunities for both sides to bring sustainability into a conversation that is live and active and required and necessary, and just adding a new dynamic to that conversation.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, that's the impetus of what we're trying to do, is to create to bring a level of awareness to it, so people make decisions and ask those questions. It may not be the leading one, but at least it's part of the overall sort of buying process of reasons why you would do it. But then also, in my opinion, it's a lot like the cybersecurity side. If you're developing and building with it in mind, it becomes somewhat second nature to what happens. And I'm not sure if at all areas of our industry the thought is being put into currently right now the software maintenance, if you would, of those systems. And if you look at the trigger points of which would cause somebody to rip and replace a lock, to meet a user experience that's needed, it's going to be either it breaks, you don't like the look and color and the finish, or there's some sort of connectivity issue that it has when it comes to wanting to be part of a user experience you have. So like, those are like the three that I could think of why you would even take a lock out that is an existing building and replace it. Mm-hmm. So if we can capture those three, that would reduce the need for it to go into the landfill.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
So yeah. So no, I think it's the start of an ongoing conversation, maybe as an industry too. It'd be interesting to see if there's some best practices that, again, I go back to this idea that this should be just like safe schools.
Yeah.
You'd think that this could be sort of a rallying cry of an area that an industry could set some standards that said, if you're a lock, here's how you should handle this stuff to reduce landfill, right?
Yeah. I mean, think about all the data sheets that you've seen in your day, Lee, about all the various locks that are out there, right?
Oh, yeah, a lot.
And, I would love to start to see some level of landfill impact or something along those lines on that data sheet that speaks to the sustainability aspect of it, right? Whether it's usability and lifespan, how it was made, whatever that is. I think that's something that needs to become a part of the data sheet. It's an important aspect of the lock.
Yep, just like the blue blinky lights. It's as important as that is. So, all right, well, to kick off of a continued conversation, we'll keep the message going. And see sort of, if we can help move the conversation forward. So appreciate everyone's interaction online, and thanks. I appreciate it, Colin. It's good seeing you again.
Yep. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week.